Hey everybody, what's going on? It is James here with Crypto Common Sense, aka Three Peaks Trading. And in this video, I'm going to talk more about Bitcoin and market cycles. I'm going to talk about some of the simple steps that you can take to be successful at whatever it is you want to be successful at, whether it's trading, whether it's business, whether it's a relationship in life. It doesn't matter. The same simple rules apply. I'm going to start the video out. We're going to talk about this in a second, but I'm going to start the video out. If I sound a little bit off, I just got home from the hospital. I was at the hospital for about 8.5 hours. And when I went to the hospital, I went because I thought I had an abscessed tooth and the pain was like spreading and my face was starting to swell and I was concerned about potentially affecting my airways and whatnot. And when I went into triage and I told them, hey, look, this pain is like a 9 out of 10. And I said, put that in perspective. I have a really high pain tolerance. When I broke my neck, it was only a 3 or a 4. So this is like extreme pain. And they didn't seem to care. And they set me out in the waiting room for 4 hours. Then they got me back into a room where I sat for over an hour. My wife went and told the nurse, look, his pain's getting worse. The swelling's getting worse. Like, you really need to get somebody in here to see him. So eventually the doctor comes in, we go through, we get a CT scan, blah, blah, blah. I found out, yeah, I do have an abscess tooth, blah, blah, blah. It's spreading, but my airway should be fine. I'll get to a dentist this week, and because obviously, most of them are going to be closed for Veterans Day, etc. Right. And then right as I'm getting ready to leave, I look at the paperwork and I see my blood pressure when I was in triage was 174 over 111. Now, for those of you that don't know what that means, that's extremely high, like right at stroke level, right at crisis level, where they would send you to the ER just for blood pressure. But what's even more alarming is I have high blood pressure already, and I'm on the maximum dose of an ACE inhibitor for my blood pressure, and they knew this. So they knew that I had really bad blood pressure, and they knew that I had a really bad reading, and yet the entire 8+ hours I was at the hospital, they never put me on a monitor at all for my blood pressure, and they never once rechecked it. In other words, I received negligent medical care. Now, this is the second time that I've received negligent care from the same hospital. It's the same hospital that when I went to this hospital in 2019 with a broken neck, they sent me home and told me I had a bulging disc. I didn't find out until 3 weeks later that I was walking around with a broken C1 vertebrae, which has like a 90% chance of either killing you or paralyzing you. I walked around for 3 weeks because I missed it. And I know you might be thinking, James, what does that have to do with trading? Guys, it has to do with this. If they had simply followed a basic set of rules, like they have triage, they see my blood pressure is really out of whack, and they see, oh, he's on the highest dose of lisinopril there is. Like right then and there, they should have taken me from triage and got me to a room and got me on a monitor and said, we got to get this blood pressure down. But instead, what they heard was, oh, he has a lot of pain. He's probably seeking pain meds. And they stuck me in a waiting room. They jumped to a conclusion. They had a bias that resulted in me receiving inadequate medical care. So this is the same thing that happens in markets, guys. It's the exact same thing. So this is a post of mine from, 4 years ago. And I was trying to warn people that, Bitcoin was looking toppy, yada, yada, yada. I've been talking about it for a couple of weeks at that point. And a couple of comments came in from people that I was friends with on Facebook, right? And one was just simply saying, I agree with them. Well, that didn't age very well. Another one was saying, posts like this make me cringe. Imagine saying this. And I'm not a mean person, so I'm going to save their identity. But imagine saying something like that on this post and then having to realize that this post was literally made on the day, literally the day that Bitcoin topped, right? This is a weekly candlestick here, but this post was made on November 10th. Watch this, November 10th, 2021, this candlestick, the literal top is when I made that post. And yet I had almost no interaction because it was bearish and people don't like bears. And the little bit of interaction that I did have was people basically saying that I was wrong and even somewhat in a mocking tone. It's the same thing that just happened at the ER, a bias, right? The ER sees a lot of people who are seeking, drugs like pain medications and things. And I get that. But if they'd have just taken a few minutes to look at my history, I've never had an opiate type of pain medicine at the hospital. In fact, most of the time when they offer me things like that, I just flat out turn them down because I don't want to take a chance of getting addicted to it. Now tonight, they actually gave me morphine and I didn't turn it down. I think it's the first time I ever had morphine, and it took my pain from like a 9 or a 10 down to like a 2 or a 3. And they told me like this dental pain is like some of the worst pain. It's the hardest to treat. It's got to do with nerves and stuff. But they've done a tiny bit of research. They would have said, wow, this guy never asked for pain medication. Obviously he's got a real problem here. Not to mention, I had swelling that was easily visible, and I had blood pressure, all these things saying he's in extreme pain. But they ignored it and went with this, not another one of these types of people. And it's the same thing with markets. People are so desperate to get a certain result that they will ignore it, everything the chart is trying to tell them. They're so desperate for Bitcoin to do XYZ that they will take unjustified risk trying to get rich off of Bitcoin. And it destroys lives. I say that with absolutely no hyperbole. I have personally watched this destroy people's lives chasing Bitcoin. I had a group member who joined my program when I first launched it for trading. It was like November of 2017. I launched a program that was related to trading. And one of the people that had joined it had tried to do like altcoin trading and essentially lost his life savings. And his wife left him and took his kids. And he wanted to know if I could help him get it all back. And unfortunately, I had to tell him, no, not the way that, because he wanted it back like right away. I was like, you're talking about a multi-year journey here. So keep that in mind. Like, don't let your bias blind you to what's really happening in markets. For example, Bitcoin has been pumping the last couple of days, and that's great if you're in a short-term long. It's also great if you're looking for a potential place to go short, maybe. But a lot of people will see a small pump like this and get super excited and like, oh, okay, I got to get back into Bitcoin. They may have sold down here because they're scared. Now they start rushing back in here. But if you really look at what's going on with Bitcoin, this is a lower high so far. It's also retesting this previous area that had some trading volume. And, the cliche is support flips to resistance when you break it. So if you're going down and you break through support, it flips to resistance. So that's what this potentially looks like, okay? It doesn't mean it is, because we never know, but this very well could be, again, the earlier parts of phase E. So we really need to wait, and Bitcoin needs to reclaim, these levels up in this range and really take out this level around 115. And then I would say, you know what, this is probably a bear trap down here. This may actually try to hit the top of the range or even potentially go higher. But right now, this is just a lower high. Don't let your bias convince you otherwise. What's super interesting is if we take a look at the QQQ, it did something really strange today. So this is a daily candlestick chart. This pattern right here, where you had this big red candle, then the bit of a doji candle, it's more a hammer in this case, and then this gap up. This is actually a very bullish pattern, which is pretty wild, right? It may be because the federal government is, ending their shutdown. I don't know what caused it to pump like that. But what I would say is be very careful with QQQ right now or being super bearish on it, because this is actually a very bullish pattern. It's called like an abandoned baby or something like that. Again, I'm on morphine right now, so my head's swimming a little bit. But it is a bullish pattern. So be very careful about, how you approach this. Essentially, this was the day in here yesterday or, Friday, not yesterday. It got abandoned, right? It gapped down, then gapped back up and just left it. And what that does is that traps all the people down here who were shorting, they got trapped. All the people down here who got scared and started selling, they got trapped. And a lot of times what happens is they are desperate to get back into the market when it gaps up like this. And so it creates a bullish trade, right? Again, it's not confirmed yet. It is confirmed as far as the pattern itself, but it's not confirmed that it means the market's going to go back up. We really need to see what the next couple of days hold. But if you look at QQQ, it's an uptrend. It never did turn into a downtrend. This is all an uptrend, right? Going back to April on the daily charts, this is just one big uptrend. As far as trading goes, this is really no man's land for me, right? Because again, we had double top, it retested, it broke down, and all of a sudden it's trying to pop back up. So me personally, I would be just kind of sitting back, which I've been taking a break the last few weeks from trading anyway, but I'll be sitting back and kind of letting this thing play out. And I'll be doing the same thing with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is really, really in an interesting spot right here. This is pretty much make or break it time for Bitcoin. If this thing gets back up in this range, again, this could end up being a reaccumulation. But if it starts to break down from here, then that would pretty much seal the deal in my mind that we're in phase E, which would be the markdown phase. So going back to what I said earlier in the video, I said I wanted to show you guys something that would basically allow you to be successful in whatever you wanted to do, whether it was trading or relationships or cryptocurrency or whatever. And that one thing is this, guys. Most people are bouncing all over the place in their lives. They never really focus on what they want. And so I used to be a business coach, and I would always see this with people. They would come onto a call, right? They pay $10,000 for coaching. And they would come onto the first call. And the first call, what we always did was I would ask them to explain to me what, their typical work day looked like, and we'd have a conversation about that. And then I would say, what do you get accomplished in a typical day, yada, yada, yada. And what I would find out when we dug into this over and over and over again, people, most of the entrepreneurs who were failing were not failing because they didn't spend enough time at their desk. They were failing because they spent a lot of time at their desk but didn't get anything done. So they might be at the desk for 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours, but they were so busy, they would go through what I called OCD loops. They would check their email, they would check Facebook, they would check other social media, they would check their email, they would check their earnings, they would check their stats. They would just go in this circle, right? And so what I did was I always gave all these people the same assignment. It was a very simple assignment. I asked them to go buy a binder at their local, like Walmart or whatever. It's a little 3-ring binder. And I gave them a worksheet. And that worksheet was one that they filled out every night. And the first part of the worksheet was, what did I accomplish today? And the second part of the worksheet was, what is it I will accomplish tomorrow? And they were only allowed to pick 2 things that they were allowed to work on the following day. That was it, just 2 things. At first people would kind of push back, like, no, I have so much I have to get done. But what they found out was when they started focusing on less, they actually got more done. Because instead of saying I got 50 things to do and then doing none of them, they would say I've got 2 things to do, and they would get at least one of those 2 things done. So the focus is the answer to all of this. Like, for example, with trading. All right, let's talk trading for just a second. Even if you're the world's worst trader right now, if you would sit down an hour a day, just 1 hour a day, go into replay mode on TradingView or whatever software you use, and paper trade without cheating, without looking forward, like paper trade every day for an hour. If you would do that for a year, you would likely be better than 90% of people who are trading. But most people won't do it. But if you would do it for a year, you could become amazing at this. You would see chart patterns naturally. It would be second nature. You would understand liquidity. You would understand, how support and resistance works, supply and demand. You would just be great. And it's the same thing with like business as an example. Business, the hard part about business is the opportunities are everywhere. Like, that's the thing. Like, you have 2 groups of people. You have the groups of people who are like, there's no opportunity. Life sucks. And you have the other types of people who are like, there's opportunity everywhere, and they want to grab all of it, right? That's me. I'm that guy. Like, I see so many opportunities, but you have to stop yourself from grabbing every opportunity and just choose one and go for it. So like in business, for example, if you created one product and all you did was work on that one product every single day, you could have a really amazing product. And then after you had that really amazing product, if all you did was work on advertising for that product, you could have an amazing customer base. But that's not what people do. They try to create 32 products and get, no products finished. Or for example, let's say that I wanted to start a service related business, like a lawn mowing company. I can literally go to the post office and I can have them deliver letters or postcards or whatever I choose to specific mail routes. I can literally look at this software. I can look at the U.S. Postal Service's website, and it will tell me like the demographics and the average incomes of these different mail routes, and I can choose which mail routes to target. And I can just mail those people saying, hey, I'm, a new business. I'm starting a lawn care company. The first 10 customers get XYZ off. The next 10 customers get this. I can have those people scan QR codes on those mailers. It sends them to a website. I can pixel them. Then I can remarket to them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I could build a very successful lawn care company if that's all I focused on. Or if all I focused on was becoming an amazing options trader. And I spent every day, an hour a day for the next year, learning all about, the Greeks and the delta and all this different stuff, theta and, time decay, all this stuff. If I spent a year learning all about options, I could become an amazing options trader. Because a lot of people, they see what I'm doing and they think there's some secret sauce hiding underneath the surface. And the only secret to me and my technical analysis is I've done it a lot. I remember a point in time where trading for me, like if I traded $1 million in volume in a month, I was like, wow, I'm like a serious trader. Look at me go. And now it's like it's not even an abnormal day for me to hit $10 million in one trade day in less than 6 hours of trading. It's just repetition, repetition, repetition. If I want to have the biggest biceps, I could just do curls I don't know. I'm not as much about like muscle. I think with muscle, you got to have like rest and recovery. But let's say I could just do bicep curls every other day, make sure I'm eating plenty of protein, make sure I'm getting plenty of calories. And over time, my biceps just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm going to look funny. I'm going to have big biceps and nothing else. But that's all it is, guys. It's the only thing that keeps people broke through all the excuses and all the bullshit. 99% of people, they don't have a real excuse. They're broke because they just don't have any focus. And sometimes they have medical reasons for that. They have legitimate ADD, or like autism makes it hard to focus. Depressive disorders and bipolar makes it hard to focus. Sometimes life is just chaotic and stressful, and there's so many things pulling you in 20 different directions. But at the end of the day, that's it. You have to choose what you're going to focus on. Say no to everything else. Again, I'm not talking about personal life. I've seen people so many times talk about how like you got to be willing to sacrifice family time in this. That's bullshit. If you're so busy that you think you have to sacrifice family time to be successful, the truth is you're not. It's all in your head. No one's that busy. You're just not that busy. You don't need enormous amounts of time. You don't need to neglect your spouse and your children and your friends. That's bullshit. What you need to do is be disciplined with your time. Instead of sitting at the desk for 8 hours and wandering around for 8 hours, you need to say, I'm going to work for 2 hours. I'm going to do these 2 things. And then I'm getting up and I'm going to go play with my kids. I'm going to go have dinner with my wife. I'm going to have dinner with my husband. I'm going to go see an old friend. I'm going to pick up the phone and call my mom or call my dad or whatever it is. That's what you have to do. So it's almost 6 a.m. and those are my morphine-induced ramblings. I hope you got something out of this video. Please remember, I am just some guy sitting in a spare bedroom, which means that nothing in the video is financial advice. And obviously, you should always do your own due diligence and seek out professional financial advice from a licensed financial advisor for making any type of investment in cryptocurrency, the stock market, precious metals, forex, or any other tradable asset. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and let's do something different. How about you guys leave me a comment, tell me a story about a time where bias came back to bite you in the butt, whether it was through trading or some other area in life. Let's see some stories. Let's get some interaction going. All right. Talk to y'all soon. Have a wonderful evening, morning, day, whatever it is when you're watching this.